Welcome to week 8 of the summer 2025 database driven web development course. I'm Jim Kaufman with Rankin Technical College. So first, I just want to congratulate everyone for we're now at the halfway mark of this course. Time does fly. Before you know it, we'll be done with this one, and most of you, I think there'll be one student who may be graduating after this. But besides that, I think everybody will be continuing on. So, but congratulations to get to this point. As far as lectures, so Monday and Tuesday, what we're going to be doing is on Monday, we'll be doing the authentication lecture. And then tomorrow will be authorization. So they kind of, in a way, work like hand in hand. And, we'll discuss what the difference is and what it means, each of those terms mean, if you do not know. So go ahead. I'm going to do a quick lecture on that. And then I'm going to just kind of start walking through the lab. And, we're going to have a new edit collection to track changes. And then also we'll be using something called auth middleware. And this was actually something that a previous instructor created. And we used to use like npm install, just like we've done other packages. But this package he hasn't really done much with this. He's no longer with Rankin, but we've been using it anyhow. But it's kind of getting outdated. And so started having sometimes you can, if you have an outdated package and you try to install it, can cause some problems for you. And so what I ended up doing is I actually took all the code and I just kind of made changes. So we're going to kind of still be using it, but we're not going to do an npm install. We're just going to, by hand, we're just going to, I have a zip file, and by hand we'll just go ahead and unzip that to a directory, and that will have all my changes in there. And so that should help get around the problems that's causing, because it's kind of a little bit outdated as far as some of the packages are concerned. So we'll go ahead and be doing that, and then tomorrow we're going to go through authorization, and then we'll walk through that lab. Will be a lot of roles and permissions on that one. So let's go ahead and start the lecture here, and it shouldn't be too bad. Okay, so authentication. So as far as the definition of authentication is a process of determining whether someone or something is in fact who or what it declares itself to be. So we always think of, you think of it as being a user most of the time when you think about situations like this where you're logging into a system. And so you have to have some information, right? And so, a lot of times it's username and password or email and password. But there's, additional authentication type of things as well, others as well. But, besides just a individual user, sometimes it's one system accessing another system. So it's not always a person, right? And especially in the world of AI, it's going to become very important as well, because you'll have like AI agents, and they will have to be those AI agents. You want to authenticate them. You don't want to just let anyone in. So those AI agents will also have to authenticate, and that's kind of going to be a whole new process coming down the pipeline, so to speak. Okay. But the most common form of authentication is basically, either username and password that we're used to, or an email as well. So here's some different authentication. Comes in many forms. Just like where I mentioned, username and password, or email and password, them are basically login forms. And, that's what we will be actually using here, is a login form. For the final project, we'll be using a login form. Also, there's credit card. So you got credit card number plus a PIN code, or, credit cards also have chips. So you might have the credit card number plus a chip plus a PIN code. And then also sometimes credit card authentication also includes sometimes the expiration date plus the CVC code. And then also on your credit card, you basically have a signature there. It's kind of still a form of authentication, kind of a person-to-person thing, right? You could show that your card's signed by you, and so that's another sign of another type of authentication. And then as far as like smartphones, you have like a PIN code that you'd enter on your phone to get access. Pattern, you can have different pattern to access your smartphone, fingerprint, facial recognition, etc. So back to, we already said kind of what is authentication, and it's not just one specific phrase, it can be phrased in different ways, but authentication is the process or action of proving and showing something to be true, genuine, or valid. In the situation of computing, it's the process or action of verifying the identity of a user or process. And always remember that it's not always just the user. It can be also a situation where you got a process as well, something else besides just a human user. It could be a process, a AI agent, whatever. So kind of what I already mentioned this. Authentication technology provides access control for systems by checking to see if a user's credentials match the credentials in a database of authorized users. There could be other ways of doing it besides just maybe a database. Maybe you have a local database, but maybe you also use some kind of a service as well. But even those services that you would use, that's also stored in a database, but it may be a third party. Maybe like you might use Google Authentication or others as well, right? So there's other options there besides just you being in control. Like if you work for a company, usually your company's handle that, but sometimes you do use external type services for things like that, just say like a Google login or whatever, right? Okay. I think it's kind of redundant there on that. So one thing to remember, each piece of information that a user provides is known as credential. So authentication factors, each credential can be categorized into one of the following factors. You have knowledge, which is something you know; possession, something you have; inherence, something you are; location, where you are; and maybe behavior, how you act. Okay, we go through each of these. So knowledge factors. So knowledge factors is something you know. You know your username, you know your email, your password, your PIN code, etc. Your driver's license number, your social security number. Some security question, etc. These are all things or you can get quickly. You might not have them all memorized, but it's something that something that you have that you can use, right? Number the knowledge factors. Now, possession factor is something you have. There's, magnetic strips, there's smart cards, there's security tokens. Don't know if all of you've used different things like that. I've actually have one that it's actually a Bluetooth one type thing. And, there are some security concerns with some of those. But, there's these security tokens that you can also use if you have everything set up in a secure way. And there's also authenticator apps. I'm sure most of you've used authenticator app. I know Google provides one, Microsoft provides ones, and there's other ones as well. Or something else you have is one-time codes. You'll be sent a code, right? You wait, emails you a code, you use that code as an additional way to log in. Inheritance factors, remember, like something you are, fingerprints, retina scan. It's all about physical type stuff, facial recognition, voice recognition. These are all inheritance factors. So location factors, where you are, GPS coordinates. Whenever you access anything, you're accessing that with a specific IP address. Geofencing, network architecture, private networks, firewalls, VPNs. That's maybe a little bit out of scope for us, but there's there, especially when you're talking about maybe one system accessing another system. It may be within private networks, firewall, VPNs that only this VPN can access this VPN. This network can access this network, right? So that's kind of a more extended beyond just a user. As a human user, it's maybe like more system related, right? So behavior factors, how you act, speed of a mouse movements, keystrokes, these the CAPTCHA stuff where you go ahead and select those things. Them are also considered behavior factors as well. Okay. So this form here only requires knowledge. If you know somebody's password, there's nothing stopping you from using their account. If you know their username, email, password, you can use their account, right? So 2 factors is more secure. So asking for additional credentials always provide much more security, especially if they fall under the same factor. However, requiring more factors greatly improves security, right? So, besides just using, one factor, it's best to be able to use multiple factors to add additional security. All right, we're going to talk about cookies here a little bit. So HTTP is stateless, right? So basically, you got stateful and stateless, 2 different concepts there. Stateful is when you do something and then you can do it again and it knows who you are. This is kind of this constant, it's constantly, you're passing something along that knows who you are and what you can do, right? Whereas stateless, basically HTTP is stateless, meaning that you send a request over there. You send a request to like some news site, and it returns a response. Okay, and then that's it. You're done, right? So the server does not remember what has happened before. The server does not track the state of a user session, and this is by default, right? Every request is treated as independent. Every request must be self-contained. Requests can be made and processed in any order. Okay. The benefit of stateless is great for performance, error handling, and testability. Makes it harder to deal with users' logins and authorization. But as far as performance, it's much better. Where if you have to sit there and authenticate all the time and things like that, there's overhead in that, right? If you want things fast, it's best to have things open where they don't have to authenticate. You can just access a website, send a request, get a response. When you're not having to worry about who that person is, any kind of authentication, right? So cookies make your app stateful. They're little bits of data stored on the client side. They are automatically sent back to the server with every request. They are stored as plain text. They are not encrypted. Okay. They are readable and modifiable by both front end and back end. Okay. Now there's different ways. When we talk about stateful, we're talking about like client. This is from like a client standpoint. There are ways to do more secure right? You want to be more secure, stateful as well, okay? But cookies that are stored, we did this in the HTML course where we had a cookie we saved, and you could actually go look at the cookie and see, you can see everything, right? So it's not really secure. It's helpful, it's useful, but it's not really secure. Each cookie has a few properties: a domain name, expiration date, name and value pairs. Here's just simple examples of setting a cookie. We've done this before. Don't want to go through too much of this. Okay, let's talk a little bit about an encryption. So encryption is a method in which information is converted into secret code that hides information's true meaning. It's one definition. Multiple definition of encryption is kind of one of them. In computing, unencrypted data is also known as plain text, and encrypted data is called ciphertext. The formulas used to encode and decode messages are called encryption algorithms or ciphers. To be effective, a cipher includes a variable as part of the algorithm. The variable, which is called a key, is what makes the cipher's output unique. When an encrypted message is intercepted, the intruder has to guess which cipher as well as the keys that are used to encrypt the message. And I would go on to say a little more than, well, the intruder has to guess. There's obviously programs that try to do that force themselves in, right? But more than just a individual guessing application, you can be doing things a lot quicker and have a lot more capabilities in cracking things like that, right? Types of encryption: there's symmetric, asymmetric, and there's hash. Okay. So here you're basically. So here it's basically you're just doing plain text to ciphertext. The same here for both of these, but asymmetric actually has a public-private key, so it's a bit more of a two-way type of scenario, right? Here you're using the same key to encrypt as you are to decrypt. Here for asymmetric, you have one key for encryption, a different key for decryption. Okay. So that makes it asymmetric. Then hash, just plain text to hash. We've seen this before where we had, if you recall, the HTML course, especially for some of those JavaScript libraries that we were using. Some of those JavaScript libraries we were using, they had actually encryption. So you had to make sure if that encryption key did not match, then the browser would not display that. Right. So that's an idea. That's an example of hashing is there. Let's see. Yeah, one thing probably should know a little. It's important for in the development world, to understand, well, a lot of these security things, but understand, most of the time, a lot of times, especially in the HTML course, we just HTTP, right? And, we're using basically HTTP now, but there's also what's called HTTPS, and it's a secure, and SSL stands for Secure Socket Layer, okay? SSL for Secure Socket Layer. And basically what it is takes HTTP and makes it much more secure, okay? And it is what it is it's HTTP over the secure socket layer, makes it HTTPS, okay? But you have to have things set up. You have to have things set up on a server. You can't just do it on the client side, right? It's really based on having that set up in a server to be. You have to have certificates and so forth, and there's quite a little bit involved and knowledge that you need to have to be able to set that up. Password hashing. So here it's just talking about taking a password adding a salt onto that password, having a hash function to store. Okay. And then also what we're going to be kind of doing a little bit here today is using like JWT tokens. And so we're going to be doing authentication with JWT tokens. And so we're going to be using a package, a node package that will help us with that. And so we'll be getting into that here. Let's see what we're here. Okay, HTTP provides no encryption. The HTTP protocol provides no mechanism for encryption. If you are on a Wi-Fi network, all your HTTP requests and responses can be seen and read by anyone in the area that has the Wi-Fi password. HTTP provides a layer of encryption over HTTP, right? HTTPS wraps an HTTP connection with the SSL, which is the secure sockets layer, which provides encryption for your HTTP connections. Yeah, it's just showing you here that, I'm sure you've seen this before in a browser. Say not secure. Obviously, and here this is a situation on the right-hand side secure, and you can see the HTTPS there, right? Certificates. Public and private keys are stored in certificate files. You can view the certificate for a website via the address bar. Maybe we'll do that real quick here. So up here, you can click on this. I'm using Google Chrome, right? It's telling you it's secure. So you know this HTTPS. It's telling you it's secure right there. Connection is secure. Connection and certificate is valid. Here is a certificate, and you have to have the certificate to be able to do the HTTPS, right? The secure method of HTTP, and here's the information on all of that, right? Okay. I don't want to get too far involved in that today. Let's see. Signed certificates are issued to register domains and cost an annual fee. So there's costs associated with it. It's important to kind of understand that generally these certificates are issued and signed by what's called a certificate authority, a CA. And, spending some time on this it'd be important in your career to understand some of the basics with all of this, because you're gonna be coming up against this at some point. Okay, maybe not early on, but at some point. It's important to really be ready and for interview for at least some basic security, all right, questions. Self-signed certificates. Certificates can be self-signed to facilitate testing. Self-signed certificates are free, but the browser will warn you that the connection is not secure. So you can create some like in PowerShell and so forth. And there's also a utility OpenSSL that also can create some self-signed certificates. And it's just saying here that they could be incompatible. Okay, we won't cover how to use HTTPS today. The section will be meant to provide an overview. Okay, yeah. So here we've already kind of done this, so I'm kind of breeze through this, but we use bcrypt to hash passwords, and that's what we did to hash the passwords and put them in the database. For some reason that you haven't completed that with your lab assignments, make sure you do. Just going to kind of skip over this for the most part. Do want to talk about JSON Web Tokens. We're going to be using that today. So JSON Web Tokens provide a secure mechanism to issue authentication tokens, which can be used to prove your user's identity. And this is kind of an example of what one will look like. And we'll end up seeing this. We'll see this in Postman, okay, So when we get this all set up, we'll be able to see these cookies, this authentication JWT cookie actually in Postman. Okay, and it'll have all these. You won't be able to read it because it's going to be have all this kind of encrypted text there, right? So you won't be able to read what's actually there. You'll just see the encrypted text. So this is a hash 256. This is the most basic kind. This is just saying the algorithm, header algorithm, that type JWT, right? So the algorithm is the 256 and the type is JWT. Okay. So there's a few NPM packages available to generate and validate JW tokens. We'll be using a JSON Web Token package for this course. And we just do the NPM install JSON Web Token. We'll do that here shortly. This is just kind of showing you a basic way to do this. Be a little different than what we're going to do. And like I said, I'll be showing you this here in a minute. It does have an expiration, and there's different ways to do this expiration. We'll kind of be using the numeric ones where you take 1,000 milliseconds, you take the the milliseconds times the minutes, right, times the hours. So we do that to determine how long. So how long, and it's how long that token will last. So how long you want that to last? Maybe an hour, maybe a minute, 5 minutes, whatever. Most of the time it's going to be, a little longer than that, obviously. You log in, you probably want it to kind of, and that's what kind of different companies do as well. Like, when you ever log into a site and all of a sudden it says, getting ready to log you out, right? Because it's storing something. It's storing something on your client side, storing a token, and then when that starts getting close to expiring, it lets you know, hey, getting close to expiring here, and wants you to click OK to continue, right? If you don't, then shortly after that, the token will expire, right? Okay, I guess we're going to do it a little bit different. So generally, we'll send back this JWT token as a cookie so it can be stored for later use. And this is just basically the JWT website, which is here. So if you want to know some more about it, here's an introduction. When should you use them? What's the structure, etc., right? So it's obviously good to understand a little bit about this. And it has some other things you can try, and you can test some things out as well. Okay. I think that is that. Okay. So let's get started with the lab now. Close that out. I'm going to close that too. Okay. So we are going to do some authentication. Also want to kind of go through a couple other things in this lab. So obviously, there's things you got to read through these because sometimes it adds some certain things along the way. So you need to really always read through each of these. Sometimes it's redundant because you kind of might have done some of it, but there might be cases where you really didn't do everything. So you need to make sure, there are a couple things that are due. And here, let me search for... so there is this new one here, implement this new route, which is me, where you can actually update your own account information. Okay, so that's going to be a new a new route called me. So this is for users to update their own information. Okay, so just keep an eye and make sure you go through this. So the big thing is we're going to be issuing a JWT token to track, and then we're going to be using this auth permissions. And this was I created a zip file, and like I said, this was a part of a node module that a previous instructor had, and we've been kind of using it for some years here, recent years. And but it was kind of getting outdated in some ways, and trying just to install it was causing some problems. So what I ended up doing is I just ended up taking the code and making some additional changes to that, made it into a zip file, which we'll just unzip it into a directory and we'll use it right from there. Okay. And we're going to do that here in a minute. The other big thing is part of this is going to be all edits must be tracked. So what we're going to have is a new collection called edits. All right. And it'll be tracked with a date and time the change was made. So what an edit really is kind of the edit's actually kind of an old school word for what it is when you make a change. Let's say you made a change that changed something in the database. Okay. It's very important to be able to track who did that. You want accountability. You want to be able to know. You want to be able to an audit. An audit is another word that's kind of used sometimes, but from programming, a lot of times it's called an edit, right? You make an edit an edit's kind of making a change, and it can be called different things. You could call it audit, right? We're calling it edits here, but audit and edit is so that you can track who made the change. Who updated that bug, who closed that bug, who did these different things, right? So we're going to have a new collection called edits, what you can call it, I guess what you want, depends on, but edits. So create a new collection called edits, and let's look at an example here it's going to be used in multiple of these. I went ahead and highlighted the ones that say edits. But even though it has that, also remember there might be some other things in here. It's not like you only have to do what's highlighted. You need to go through these and make sure that you've already done this. If you haven't, then you need to do it, right? And it's going to be very important tomorrow because we're going to, especially things like these roles, because we're going to be doing a lot role-based stuff tomorrow in the Lab 4-02. The next lab. But for the edit, you're going to have basically these different fields. You're going to have a timestamp, which is current date. COL stands for basically, it's short for collection. And it's saying this is a user collection. OP is the operation you're doing. And in this case, this is this is a register, this is an insert. So when you register a new user, we're going to track who registered that user, right? Who did it, and this is going to be the update, the user that did this, right? The operation was basically an insert. That's what you're kind of doing. You're inserting a new user. The target is the user ID, and that's the person who updated it, and then you're saving some user information as well. So that's kind of consistent, I think, for the most part on these. Yeah, because I guess you don't have an authorization when you do a register here. You're not, unless you're authenticating when you register. But for the most part, you're not going to have that authentication when you do a register. You're going to do that when you log in, right? And so once you log in, you'll have that. And for this new one, implement this new route of me, you're going to have to authenticate before you can change your own data, right? Makes sense there. So you have to authenticate, and it's only going to allow you to change your data, not somebody else's, right? So that's what this new route's going to be. And then here, you're going to go ahead and save all this to the edits collection. Once again, the collection is a user collection. OP is the operation, which is an update. The user ID is the person who did it, right? Update fields that were changed. You just, pass in your update object. And then also, once we do the authentication, you'll be able to do a request.auth and get the authentication. Okay? So you're also going to store that as well in the database. Okay. All right, let me show you a little bit of code just to make things maybe a little simpler here for you. Let me see here. So, and this is just an example. This is a previous student's work, okay? So yours might be a little bit different, what you called some things, right? But here is basically an insert of a new bug, okay? And they have a created on day, a created by. And as you can see, they're using the request.auth.user ID. So it's the user ID of the authenticated user, right? It's the user ID of the authenticated user logging in. Here, this is a classification, inserting a new bug. By default, it's going to be unclassified. It's setting closed to false. And then here you're actually, in this case, yeah, you got a bug ID, you're creating a new object. Obviously, it'll create one on its own if you don't do it this way, but that's fine as well. And then obviously you're going ahead and adding your bug, right? You're adding your bug. So the only thing's different here, very much different with the new stuff we're going to be doing here is you're using you're using this auth user ID to figure out who created this, right? Who created this? So it's the person who logged in, who's authenticated. And then here is the new edit, right? So this is your new edit collection. You can call it your edits collection. And you're just creating a new edit object here. And you're doing a timestamp. Here's your collection is a bug. Your operation is insert your target. In this case, the target's going to be a bug ID. Yeah, I probably misspoke about that earlier. In this case, it's going to be the target's going to be what you're doing. You're changing the user. You're changing a user would be the user ID, not your own user ID, but the user you're changing. And in this case, you're changing a bug. So the target would be the bug ID. The update is going to be this new bug. So you're basically you're sending this new bug, the same one that you went ahead and added the bug to the database, sending that same new bug right here to your edit. So you'll have that information right there within your edit as well. And then here you've got a new edit auth. And this is the auth object. It will be part of the request. Then here you're basically just calling a new database. So this will be a new database. Function you'll create is add edit for the new edit. And here's kind of an example of that where you're doing an add edit, passing in your new edit object, and that's it. Pretty simple what you're doing here. Obviously, you're going to be creating a new collection. Probably would have been best for this student had lowercase e for edits, but that's okay. But that's the collection name. The new collection you're going to create, and you're just inserting one record, right? So that's about it there. I don't think that should be too bad for you. Learning a little bit about the request.auth as you get in there and we play around a little bit, you'll understand more about that. But as far as creating the new edit collection, any different than anything else you did, we're not doing a lot of stuff here with this collection. It's not like all the different routes we're doing with user or bugs, right? So this one's going to be pretty basic, right? We want to keep track of changes, right? It's kind of an audit of what has changed, who changed it type thing. Okay. So next here, I want to go ahead and start working on what we need to do to implement authentication. Okay, so here at the beginning of the lab assignment, it says use the auth permissions middleware code module to validate the token. and the centralized authentication logic. So what we're going to do here for this is we're just going to go ahead in our project and we're going to create a middleware directory. And you want that in the root directory of your issue tracker project. And we're going to extract this code here. So you just kind of you click on this. And then here, just go ahead and click download. And this will download it locally. A little delay here for some reason today. Okay. So I went ahead and downloaded that. So then what you're going to go ahead and do, and what I'm doing here, I'm just using one of the students in our class's code. Not this ain't going to change their code. I'm just kind of using this for demonstration purposes. So we can kind of start from scratch on this. So here, let's make front end. So here what we want to go ahead and do is just go ahead at this level. We want to create a new directory, new folder, right? No, we don't want it there. We want it here. And we're going to call this I don't like that it does that sometimes. We're going to call this a new folder, and we're going to call this middleware. Okay, now we got this middleware folder at the root directory. And if I want to just kind of, I guess I can reveal this in Explorer. So we got this. So I want the path to this. So this is going to be the path. So I'm going to copy this path. I'm going to go to our downloads. And then here, I'm going to go ahead and right click on this and do extract all. And I am going to copy that path. Okay. And then I'm going to hit extract here. Okay. And now we have auth permissions in our middleware folder, right? And then we come back over here. It's all here. Here is all the files. And if you want to look real quick here, what we're going to be using today, and well, like I said, what I did here is I made these into ESM modules. I made this in, and then there were some packages that were some really outdated dependencies here. And this was causing me a bunch of problems because this module, this authentication module was using a really old Express one, and so I updated this to newer, okay, and so this should work fine for everyone, and we're going to be seeing it work here shortly. So that's kind of what I did here. You don't have to worry about anything in here, okay? You're not have to build anything. Once you have this here, you're fine, okay? We're just going to import this, and basically we're going to import from this index.js that's in this auth permissions folder, and we're going to be import today. What we'll be doing is using this one, auth middleware, and I think we'll also just use is logged in. We'll use that also, and we're going to use that more for just being able to test it so we know that it actually has worked, okay? But some of these others, so tomorrow we're going to be doing a lot more with these has a role, has any role, has permissions, okay? So tomorrow's going to kind of build upon what we accomplished today. Okay, so let's see here. So we created our middleware folder in our root directory, our final project. We downloaded the zip file and extracted the contents, so we're good with that. And now we want to install our cookie stuff. So we're going to go ahead and, even though I'm bcrypt, we already have that, that's okay. Just grab that, and then so let's go ahead and install that. Okay, that looks good. All right. So there we installed that cookie parser. What did we do all there? bcrypt, you should already have that. Cookie parser is very important, and the JSON Web Token. And that's one thing, if you have some problems working thing, make sure that you have, and I'll show you when we get there, you need to make sure that a couple things you define at a kind of high in your code. You don't want to do it down below because it'll cause a problem. It needs to be set up before you you actually use any of your routes. Okay, and I'll show you that here in a minute. Okay. All right, so first we want to go to our index.js file. And in here we want to import the cookie parser and also that middleware. And let me just grab all of this to make it simpler. So we have that debug there. So it's important here before you do any of your things down here. Before you do any of your things down here, make sure that you have this use cookie parser. The use here for the cookie parser kind of higher up here, okay, in your code. You don't want to do it lower because if you don't use this, it's going to have it won't never parse the cookie. It needs to parse the cookie before it gets to the, later parts of your code there. So basically here we're importing the cookie parser. We're importing that auth middleware. If you recall, we had that auth middleware here in the index.js file, auth middleware. And okay, and then here what we're doing is also we need to do we will have to do a JWT secret. Let me show you that here in a minute. So this is the auth middleware. That's this one right here, and we're passing in a secret. Okay, and then we're passing in the name auth token, and that's the name you'll end up seeing in the cookie and Postman when we get there. It's HTTP only, true. We're only using HTTP. We're not using HTTPS. The max age is going to be, it uses milliseconds. So this is going to be 1,000 times 60 times 60, 60 minutes, 60 seconds. Okay. So this will actually be an hour. So if you change this just to a 1, that would be a minute as opposed to an hour. Maybe we'll do that later just to see it expire quicker. Okay. So we've got that. So our next thing we want to do is we want to create this JWT secret. And there's different ways to do this, but there is, and I will make sure that I also include that in the lab, which I don't have right now. But there's a command here we can use. So command we can use just like this. It's node-e console.log. It's just basically it's creating a hex 32 bytes, okay? And it'll create this right here, all right? And then what we're gonna wanna do from there, I'm gonna grab this over here for a second, since this is a student's and I don't want to show. All right. What do we call that? JWT secret. Okay. So up above is some other, the database stuff of the students. So I didn't want to I didn't want to include that. So here you just do JWF secret. I'm putting mine in quotes. Best to put them in quotes. So JWT underscore secret, put it in quotes. Okay. And then obviously you have your other stuff up here. And I'll just go ahead and get rid of all that spacing here now. Okay. All right, so we got that all defined. Now we need to our login. Did we include, I think I need to include one more thing here. Obviously, we're using that. So if I'm using JWT there, I need to import that as well. Okay, so we also need to import maybe I don't need that here. Oh, look, I'm gonna leave it there for now. All right. I think I just need to add that to the login. But okay, so we've got this in our index. Like I said, the cookie parser is very important there. Make sure you've got your use cookie parser up here before you do any of your routes, any of the other uses. Okay. Now let's go ahead and go to the user, and let's do login. Well, first I'm going to go ahead and create a couple methods here. And maybe I just put these at the bottom. Keep them out of the way for now. So here we're going to issue an auth token, okay? And then here we're issuing an auth cookie, okay? So first creating the token, then we're going to create a cookie, okay? So here's all the information that's going to be in that token. There's the ID, the user ID, email, user email, and user's role, okay? Yeah, we have expiring. You know, I might need to look into. We're doing kind of multiple things here on that. That's probably not best, but okay, this will work. I'm pretty positive this will work for us here today. But so that's going to go ahead and return this token. We're going to issue an auth token. It's going to return the token. Okay. Then we're going to call issue auth cookie, and we're going to pass in that token. With the response, the token, and the user ID. Okay. And okay. So we have those methods. So this is where I actually needed to import that JWT token. Here, and since we already did our install, we should have that already. Let's just verify that in our node modules. It'll be JSON web token, and there it is. So we're good with that. Okay, and now we want to go into login user. So in our login, right before we're getting ready to, well, we know we've been successful here. Otherwise, we shouldn't get to this point. Either these will return if there's a problem, or you're going to catch it and you won't even get to this. But here we're going to go ahead and do get our auth token here. We're going to get our auth token, and we're going to pass that in to the. So these are two functions that we created at the bottom of this file. One was issue auth token, and the other was issue auth cookie, right? And we're going to be getting our user._ID. Okay, so we have that. So this is going to be the login. All right, can we go and start this? Yeah, let's start this, make sure this works before I go any further here. So let's run this. Oh, we got a problem. Let's see what that is. Cannot access app before initialization, and that's going to be index line 9. Cannot access app before initialization. Okay. I think that's going to be easy fix here for us. Yeah. Let's just do it right here. Okay, let's try that. Let's see if that helped. Yep, now we're going. We pinged. And also, that's another thing I went ahead and did in this middleware stuff. So you should be able to see some logging statements as well. So here it's got auth middleware loaded, is login middleware loaded. So it's loading a couple things there. All right. So let's go to Postman here. And I need to find a... Okay, so in Postman, here I got a user list. I'm going to go ahead and get it. I've got a login. My email down here at the bottom is Mr. Jim. And I have my encrypted password, right? I have my encrypted password that's in the database. And then I'm going to go ahead and come over here. Like I said, if you go to cookies, there won't be anything in here on cookies. I'm going to go to login now, though. And this user was using 2025. Depends on what port you're using. And this is for login. Here's my email and my password. And, obviously, you don't want a password like this in the real world, but this is what I'm doing because it's easy for me to remember. And then here, what we're going to go ahead and do, I'm going to go ahead and hit send here. This is an old response. I'm going to hit send here, and you're going to notice we have no cookies here. But once I go ahead and hit send, when I come back here to cookies, now we have this auth token and a user ID. This is what we created. Okay, here's our auth token. And you can see that our auth token is encrypted. So the data that we're sending was encrypted. So it's not human readable, right? It mentions that it's HTTP only. If you recall in that function, we requested for it to be HTTP only. Here expires Monday, June 2025, 16 GMT, which is Greenwich Mean Time, right? It's 16:08, so it's basically an hour from now, Okay, that's an hour from now. Okay, so we have that. I guess I just accidentally deleted that cookie, but that's okay. Yeah, we'll just click. So what I want to go ahead and do now is I want to add something to the user.js file here. Just so we can actually see, so how we really want this to work is we want to make sure, we're using this auth middleware now, and we want to make sure that the user's logged in before they do certain things, okay? And what I'm going to be doing right now isn't necessarily part of this lab, but it's just a quick way, just so you can see how this kind of works, okay? So what I'm wanting to do here, so if you recall in this index.js, we have this is logged in. We're using this auth middleware to create our token, and then I'm going to go ahead and use is logged in, and we're going to put that is logged in on our route so we can see how that kind of works here. So here on this, one thing I want to do here is I need to make sure I import. I'm going to import this middleware function is logged in, right? And so always make sure that you check your path, that it's correct. I don't have to do that like that. It's asking me to do that, but I don't need to do that. But you make sure your path's right. So here it's going basically up 2 levels. You're at the middleware folder, you're at the auth permissions folder. You need to go up 2 levels to middleware. I'm sorry, I'm confusing things. For your route, you're at the API level. You need to go up to 2 levels to get to your middleware and then auth permissions, okay? That's why I'm making sure, it's probably best to have your middleware in your root directory, just so you have, make that simpler for you. Okay, is logged in. So here on this now, we're going to import this. And on our list here, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to do is logged in, open and close. All right, and we're going to save this. Okay. Now let me kind of show you how this will work. What I want to do is I want to try to come in here before, when we tested all these different routes, we never had to worry about anything. So here, I think for my login, I think I got rid of the cookies. No cookies there. I want to go back into this user list, which is all the ones here. Now, if I hit send here, how this should work, I'm hoping this is going to work, right? Sometimes, don't always work like you expect it, but I expect this to work. What's going to happen here is I'm going to hit send, and it's going to actually call that function is logged in. It's going to check to see if I'm logged in. And since our cookies is empty here, you should see a message here saying you're not logged in. So let's go ahead and try that. And there you go. Error, you are not logged in. Okay. And there's some ways we can, we'll talk about this later. We can make some changes so we don't see this like this, and it's a little better format. But, it's basically saying you're not logged in. Okay. So what we have to do here now, if we go back into our user login, now I'm going to go ahead and hit send to log in. Come back to my user list here, and now if I look at cookies, I got my cookies here. Got my user auth token, and I got my user ID. Okay. And now if I go ahead and click send, since I'm logged in now, I can access this. Let me look at the code, see what got printed out here for us. Yeah. And it's always good to, include the log statements as much as possible. Yeah, this is printing out this whole error here, which, it'd be better for us to clean this up a little bit so it doesn't show be so confusing. I guess you're not logged in. Here it's showing you are logged in. Well, that was earlier before I killed the cookie. All right. Once I delete the cookie, it doesn't know on the client side. It doesn't know what I did. Right. It doesn't know I deleted the cookie. So I was logged in. I deleted the cookie. Then I ran it again, and it gave this error. Then obviously we went ahead and issued a new token. Right. And I just have some issue token route hit. Just have this logging statement. Tells you which user you have there for that. So that's all I have here for today. Just make sure that I'll go ahead and put this on there one more time. You're going to have to use this video to walk through everything. You have to use this video to walk through everything. So here's our two functions that are important for you. So I hope you guys can read that pretty good on the screen. Issue this auth token, right? So maybe I'll just go ahead and do a real quick review here, what we did. So our first thing we did is went ahead and create a middleware folder, and then we unzipped that auth permission zip file. And the link to that's in the lab. So we went ahead and unzipped that into our middleware directory. From there, we went ahead and in our env file, we created that JWT secret. Okay, we created a JWT secret. We used that one command here. Let me see if I can. Probably can't see that very well here. Let me bring that up higher. So we're going to use this command. I'll go ahead and put this one. I'll go ahead and drop this one on the lab. That's one option to use. There's different ways to create a JWT secret. There's just one option on that. So I'll go ahead and drop that in there in the lab assignment. So you want to make sure you do that, and then you create that in your env file, the JWT_secret. Make sure that matches what's in your code. And then what we did there is for the index.js file, first thing I guess what we did was we went ahead and did a install of the cookie parser and the this isn't needed in this file, but the cookie parser is needed in here. So we want to make sure that we have this. And then you have this cookie parser pretty close up top. You have to obviously define, I made a mistake there on that one because I did it before. But after you define your app, go ahead and do the use cookie parser. Make sure you do that before you do any of your route stuff. But you only need to really import your cookie parser and this auth middleware, okay? And then go ahead and use this for your JWT secret. And that's about all you need to do in your index.js file. Then in your user, let me see. Yep, okay. I apologize. And then in your user file, we went ahead and created. Now we could create this somewhere else, and maybe it would be best to create this somewhere else instead of duplicating this. Well, you don't have to really worry about this for bugs. Really, it's only when you log in, so we could leave this here. So, but make sure you go ahead and create these two functions, one to issue the auth token, one to issue the auth cookie. All right, and here we're actually creating two cookies. We're creating an auth token and user ID. You don't necessarily have to, but but it'll makes things easier if you want to go ahead and get the user ID, okay, from the cookie. So we went ahead and created these two, and here in the user, and then at the top here, want to make sure you go ahead and import the JWT from the JSON Web Token. And then in our login, right before you want to kind of put this right before you got your welcome back message, right after you kind of got through everything kind of passed, you got through everything, you had valid credentials and all of that. Then go ahead and add this, and so you want to go ahead and get your auth token. By calling the issue auth token, sending in your user object. Then you want to issue your auth cookie by passing in the auth token. Well, obviously the response, the auth token, and the user ID here. Okay, user ID, and so then that will take care of that. I think that's about it there. And if you follow that, you should be good to go. It worked for me, and in this demonstration, so I think you should be all right. Please let me know if you have any questions, and have a good day.